Welcome back to Uncharted Waters with Admiral Waters. I'm your co-host, Lieutenant Commander Kenneth Bradley. Lock in with us as we have a conversation about mission and mindset pertaining to all things Navy recruiting. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And share it with everyone. Send it to your mom, send it to your dad, send it to yourself and watch it 50 billion times. All right, let's get into the conversation. I've been really enjoying being part of the show. Thank you for joining us for another conversation. Sir, I'm not going to lie, behind your back, I've been trying to get us picked up by a major network.
How's it going?
Not good. Not good. Let's just stick to my day job. Today, we're going to talk about motivating Gen Z, which I am particularly excited about because I have two sons that are Gen Z, so I'm going to get some dad pointers here, hopefully today. With us today, joining us for this conversation from the Navy Partnership, we have Allison Drabek, Group Director, Strategy and Insights, and Chris Edmonson, Executive Director. Why don't you all tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Sure. My name's Allison Drabek, like I said. I am a brand strategist. I've been working in advertising for almost 20 years, including brands like the Navy Federal Credit Union.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really good.
I'm Chris Edmonson. I've been fortunate to work with the United States Navy since 2018. I'm on the business strategy side, and it's also my responsibility to make sure we bring all the talent that's required to fulfill the deliverables of our contract.
Yeah, I think it's really important for recruiters to know the Navy Partnership is our marketing and advertising team. These are the marketing professionals. And the partnership part is we work together, and there's more than just the Navy and the marketing agency. There's, subparts of all of that together that form the Navy Partnership.
That's right. I think sort of we're the people who create a lot of the content that appears in our media plan. So when you see a Navy recruiting commercial on Netflix or as you're surfing around the internet, that's something that we've created in partnership with NRC. And then much of Recruiting Nation would know the Strike Group, which is the experiential mobile tour that travels across the United States, sharing the message about the Navy's widest range of careers.
That's awesome. Then the marketing job is amazing. There's been a time where I've seen some of the content, and while being in the Navy, I wanted to join again.
That's great.
Good job. Let's start with a baseline. How would you describe Gen Z in terms of their values and worldviews compared to earlier generations?
Absolutely. So one of the main characteristics is that this is the first generation that grew up with the internet already well established in there. So that they're digital natives. So the way that they consume content and the way they like to communicate is online. So reaching out to them via text message versus phone is definitely going to be kind of make it more easy for them to communicate to you. They also are really practical when it comes to money in their careers. So they know that they're going to have to work hard, and they're not afraid to work hard, but they want to make sure that they have basic stability, basic things taken care of. They don't have to worry about medical benefits or things like that.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very. And what are some common misconceptions you've seen about Gen Z, especially when it comes to service or patriotism?
One of the things about service and working hard, one of the misperceptions is that they don't work hard. And the biggest thing is that it's not that they don't want to work hard, it's they want to know why they're working hard. They need to see the big picture or understand what it's all contributing to. So even if they're working on one little small task, if they understand that that's contributing to a bigger global mission or having a big impact on a community, they're all for it.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
There's another thing to consider is that this was also the generation that was most squarely impacted by during their schooling or early work career from the pandemic. And there was a lot of disruption, and they were forced to learn alternative ways to learn, alternative ways to collaborate. Some of which have carried on and become consistent, like our dependency on video conferencing, for example, and the way we use our phones. So I think as recruiters think about how they're engaging, to Allison's point, using digital channels, absolutely, but just don't ever underestimate how comfortable they are adapting to a new way to learn, a new way to collaborate, a new way to share. It's actually a challenge that they embrace. They're also world-class video creators, content creators, and editors themselves.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. Really good.
Are there perception gaps between what Gen Z thinks military life is like and the reality? And how can we bridge that gap?
There's huge gaps. So most people become affiliated with the military or are liking the military because of family connections. But there's only about 6% of the adult US population that are veterans, compared to a generation ago where it was closer to 20 or 30%. So just having that innate ability to have a conversation with a service member has gone down drastically. So they're getting their perceptions from pop culture, so movies, TV, video games. So they see kind of all those action shots, the fun shots, if you will, that you would see in Top Gun or another fun movie. So the gap is, what does it look like in your regular day? You know, when you wake up, where are you going to eat? What are you going to do? What's your downtime look like? You know, do you have the ability to play basketball, to play video games, depending on what your thing is? So showing them what the whole day looks like, not just the job.
Yeah, I think this is one really important point. You mentioned the drastic reduction in the number of veterans in society. Recruiters frequently are the United States Navy for that young person. They have no prior communication about what it's like. And so recruiters just need to keep in mind what you've just said, that young people really want to know sort of that daily routine. And that's why it's so important for recruiters to be authentic about what they experience, what life really is like in the Navy, and the goodness that is in there, the stability, some of the things you don't have to worry about, right? You know, and thinking through the benefits, the housing, those kinds of things that seem kind of mundane, but when you put on the uniform, there is a certain amount of stability and things taken care of so that the young person can then focus on the creative and the challenging, the hard work.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's really good.
If I could add one other interesting theme is the, maybe it's a misperception, is that there's an inherent lack of patriotism or other. Not true. That while this group does have some distrust of institutions overall, consistent with history, while they may or may not have an opinion of government, there's still a high degree of respect for the military and service people. However, because they've gotten so much of their inspiration from Hollywood films or other things they've seen, there's also an equal and maybe greater belief that they don't have what it takes and that they won't be successful. And that's probably one of the most important things that we can do and recruiters can do is, with honesty and transparency, talk about real life in the Navy. And the team that you have around, you always have around you. We often say, if you look at a lot of our recruitment content and films, you'll rarely see a sailor alone. And that's by design, because so much of the work that is done in the Navy is done in the trusting, with other sailors in environments that you've been well trained and prepared to succeed. So reinforcing the training and confidence and security that comes with understanding your job and understanding what other sailors are doing to support you is really, really important.
Yeah, really good.
Yes, sir. Okay, what are the top 3 motivating factors for Gen Z when deciding to join the military or the Navy specifically?
Absolutely. So for the military in general, it's your standard things like the pay that you're going to get, the benefits that you're going to get, and your opportunity for higher education. But we know that those are kind of table stakes for any branch. So if you layer on top of how we might be able to differentiate ourselves, it's looking at the opportunity to find a role that you're actually interested in that fits with you. Because the Navy offers pretty much everything you would have in the civilian world, you're going to be able to find that within the Navy. We always talk about our primary messaging being the breadth and depth of roles within the Navy. And then also the opportunity for travel. I mean, obviously that makes sense that the Navy would be able to own that, but being able to show that for very little money, you'd be able to get to see the world or just experience different cultures is something that appeals to a certain group of Gen Zers that are inclined to join.
That's another benefit or a detractor of Top Gun Maverick or Hollywood is, when young people think of warfighters, they think of, aviators or SEALs or people doing heroic things. But, we often say, warfighters are also culinary experts. They're musicians. They are dentists.
The yeoman.
People.
Sorry. I had to again.
To be warfighting ready, it requires so many jobs and so many people doing their job. And the more young people know about that range of careers, the more open they are to Navy service.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I think that breadth of, from the seabed to the stars, from the cerebral to the kinetic, is one of those great distinguishers for us. You can find particular kinetic things in other services. You can find space in other services, but you can't find all of those things. And having that choice. The other thing that I think, and I'd be interested in your perspective on this, the Navy is unique among the services in how we classify people as they enter. So you're entering for a particular job. All of our sailors are rated, meaning they're assigned to a job before they ship off to boot camp. I know other services have some classification that happens, but generally that's not quite as specific as the Navy. I would think that would be some level of interest and comfort to a Gen Zer, but I'm just curious what your thoughts. Does that matter? Does it not matter?
That's too much into the weeds for most prospects. They're really trying to understand the big picture first.
Okay.
And then once you got them probably on the line and you're having those conversations, then you can get into that kind of detail. But talking about the skills that those particular roles can give you and how they might translate to a civilian career, that's what they would be excited to hear about.
And I think that aligns well with how we recruit, which is the recruiter is recruiting into the Navy. And then once they're, they've bought into that idea, they've gone to MEPS, get qualified, and then they're talking to a classifier. But the idea that you can drill in all the way to a particular set of skills, is another one of those things that is pretty unique. It's a distinguisher for our service versus others.
Exactly.
The other thing that you say often, sir, is the Navy will take you from where you are and help forge you into a better version of yourself.
Yeah.
That's forged by the sea is the phrase we use in marketing a lot. And people find that to be true. There's so much user-generated content, that it's none of our creation, but it's sailors, active duty, veteran, reserve, who willingly share their experience online. And that's a consistent theme that comes through that work. As I started at a certain place and have achieved success that I never could have seen possible without the Navy. And that's really important. And even better that they're creating that content themselves versus content that we're pushing.
I think that's a really important point for recruiters to have in mind, this better version of yourself, that in that authentic conversation, the human-to-human interaction, communicating their personal story of, wherever they came from or wherever the recruiter came from to where they are today and how the Navy has shaped that, I think is important for young potential sailors to hear and understand.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great segue into the next question. You touched base on it. How effective is social media in reaching Gen Z with messages about Navy service? And what platforms resonate the most?
Well, social media is actually our number one driver to traffic to Navy.com. So it's highly effective reaching them. Platforms like Reddit, Snapchat, TikTok, even though we're not allowed to be on there, is where they are. And also Instagram, looking at reels and stuff like that. What was the second part of your question?
The second part was which platforms resonate the most.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You captured it.
I think it's really important for recruiters to be active on the platforms where America's Navy is most active. That's where your recruits are. It's very likely, in the hours before a recruiter has a conversation with a future sailor, that future sailor was exposed to some of our communications on social platforms. So it's an easy way to start a conversation. Did you see the reel about this or the Snapchat lens about that? We also keep a broad array of content on the America's Navy YouTube channel. And then, of course, Navy.com has plenty of information. So that's what our future sailors are seeing before they walk into a recruiting station or meet a recruiter for the first time. So please, if we could make a PSA, please visit the America's Navy channels and view the content, because it'll make an immediate connection with a future sailor.
Yeah, and it's useful when you want to show somebody that doesn't know anything about the Navy or is interested in things that you personally as a recruiter haven't done. We have content to help with that, right? That your team has helped put together. The rating videos, you have Sailor Versus, which is more entertaining, and then Faces of the Fleet, which give those kind of authentic stories about life in the Navy and the change that it has brought to some people.
Yes, sir.
And that's a good point about the educating prospects about that. They actually use those social channels a lot to educate themselves before even reaching out to a recruiter. They're going on YouTube to look at other service members' videos to see like, hey, what does it actually look like? Or get answers to some of the questions they might have before actually making the decision to reach out. So having content on those channels that reflects real conversations of like, hey, this is actually what life is like, resonate with them. And it also kind of fits with the other content that they're consuming on those channels that their friends might be posting. So it feels kind of organic and natural to see a kind of peek behind the curtain on those channels from us.
Yeah, really good.
Reddit is also a wildly popular channel for, we call them centers of influence, or parents primarily. Parents, educators, and others. So you'll find Navy moms, Navy dads on Reddit having authentic conversations among each other that future sailors are reading, and future moms of future sailors are reading. So Reddit has been a really, really powerful platform for us, not only to promote Navy content, but also to learn what future sailors and moms and dads are talking about.
Yeah, and where perceived anxieties are. Yeah,
exactly. And speaking about parents and influence over their lives, who or what influences Gen Z's career decisions, parents, friends, influences, algorithms? We could tap into that a little bit.
All of the above.
All of the above.
All of the above impact. But I would say that parents, when it really comes down to making that decision, they're going to be the most involved with a prospect. Getting an idea of, do I want to join? Is this something for me? They're definitely branching out. But when it comes down to, hey, should I make this decision? Should I sign up? Parents are going to be right by them.
We are finding success with coaches within the education community, the coaching community especially. It just naturally, the coach of a cross country team or a swim team or a football team or a wrestling team is going to have not only first person awareness of people who have the physical aspects to be a sailor, but also, unlike a parent that might help navigate a dozen children, their own and others, through a lifetime, a coach has an impact on hundreds, sometimes thousands of young people. So making sure that the coaching community is familiar and aware of Navy careers and benefits is something we're putting a lot more emphasis on.
Yeah, and that's particularly impactful especially in the Navy Special Operations realm. Those NTAGs where the coordinators and the recruiters have focused on that relationship that you mentioned, Chris, I think have seen more success because those athletes tend to be the ones, if they're interested in those types of careers, that can meet the rigorous physical standards. And to your point, they trust the coach. So if the coach is bought in and supportive, then that is very helpful, even as they go to their parents to think through that final decision.
Absolutely,
That's right.
sir.
And how can recruiters build trust with a generation that tends to question authority and seek transparency?
It's transparency. It's being transparent and building trust and gaining their trust by being honest. They want to see the good and the bad.
Yeah.
So not just painting the rosy picture of what it's going to be like, but sharing how they the recruiter themselves may have gone through something struggling, or they had to overcome something, and talk about that experience and how it made them a stronger person to begin at the end.
Yeah. Obviously, you don't want to lead with a bad day, but having that conversation about what days look like, including days that aren't ideal, you know, the things that can be challenging, the time away from family and all those, you got to take that stuff straight on, because they're reading about it on Reddit anyway.
Exactly.
That's right.
Like they're the most informed generation in history, because they have access to things, right? I mean, just think about what you can ask ChatGPT today. That thing can give a dissertation on what it's like in different jobs and different career fields. And so they're going to come with the knowledge. It's not like we're going to keep it all a secret. We have to be transparent. They have to feel that to trust us.
And last question, looking forward, what emerging Gen Z trends should we start preparing for now, especially with Gen Alpha on the horizon?
One of the cooler ones that we've seen is their approach to self-presentation at work. They're much more casual than previous generations, and they're much more open to having kind of multiple ways of expressing themselves. So they're not necessarily going to say, I am this one thing. They're going to say, I'm a multitude of things. So potentially looking at uniforms or looking at ways that they can show up to work and represent themselves as who they are as an individual could be something that the Navy might want to consider in the future.
Okay.
Also highlighting, as we don't do it so much in the content we create, as much as recruiters can do this through honest conversation, is your work is going to be hard, and it's going to be just, and it's going to be transformational. But there's a life in the Navy that isn't completely separated from whatever you did before. If you like to play the guitar, or you like to play video games, or you like to draw, or do puzzles, those things exist in the Navy. So the opportunity to be the person you want to be, certainly in service in uniform, but also during downtime or time with the shipmates is something that I think they need to learn more about.
Yeah, I think that's important, right? Because giving them the idea that you can be an individual, you can still do the things you love to do, even though we are going to wear the same uniform. I mean, that is the point of a uniform. That's part of the idea of boot camp and sort of aligning ourselves to be a team. But even within that team, there are individual ways of thinking, but also in your off time, you can still be yourself in how you dress, your hobbies, those kinds of things. And I think as recruiters think through that, that's part of what does the whole day look like?
Exactly.
What does it all look like? Do I turn into a robot when I join the military? No. You have certain times where we're together in formation, and we have certain times where we're off, doing our own thing. And that's an important message, I think.
Yes, sir. And with all that being said, I still have a lot of time to do some birding. I've been watching mallard ducks a lot and speaking on it. So, you have any closing remarks, Reb?
I don't know how to follow that. No,
sorry about that, sir.
That's good. But it's really great that you both were here today. I think your perspective from a professional marketing and advertising approach, and the research that's been done to kind of understand this, because your bread and butter is understanding the market you're approaching. It doesn't work if you don't. And I think it's really good to communicate that to recruiters. I thank you for taking the time to be here with us today.
It's our pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
We're very, very, very proud of the partnership we've forged with the Navy. It's extremely rewarding. Thank you.
Absolutely. Really good.
Thanks for joining us today. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.